So I want to demonstrate partly just how conditionals work in general, and then also how to use different types of data for our conditions. So I'll do a couple different examples. And in each case, what we'll be looking at is how to change either the image or the text to make our meme or combination of image and text different. So I'll do a couple different examples that are going to use similar approaches just so we can see different ways to do it. So we've already set up our text. I'm going to review this. So I'm going to make a copy of this. And I think I changed a little bit of the code at the end of class. So I'm just going to go over doing it again. So call this logic example 2. And I'll change the comment here. So we're still using most of the same information. So I'm going to leave most of this comment the same. So this will be logic example 2. And I don't need this. That's from a previous example. So I'm just going to clean this up a little bit. And just going to move this variable. Well, actually, I'll just delete this and go over this again. So I'm just removing the code that I'm not using just to simplify this example a bit. So for now, we have I'm a cat as our text. We have the image of the cat. And let's center a line just so it looks a little bit better. And we may need to change the fill so we can actually read it. So I'll do fill is, let's do green. Okay, that stands out a little bit better. If I do a stroke, it'll stand out better as well. So I'll do a black stroke and do stroke weight. Okay, so that looks a little bit better. And so now what I want to do is when I click on the meme, I want to change either the text or the image or some other component of what's going on. So one easy way to do this without using any variables is just to add an if statement here. So I could say if mouse is pressed, and then put my text inside there, and say else, and then draw some different text. So I'll just say hello. So now if my mouse is pressed, I'm going to get the I'm a cat. And if it's not, I'm going to get the hello. So you can see I'm clicking and I get the I'm a cat. And otherwise I get the hello. So that's one way to approach it. And it works fine. But it's not very easy to make more complex changes to what's happening here. So if I want to have the text stay the same or have multiple different versions, then I don't really have the ability to do that without adding like lots of else if statements and other things like that I don't really want to add in here. So another way to approach this is to create a variable that I can change, and then I just draw whatever text that variable has. And so we talked about this a little bit on Tuesday. You can review it here. So the way I would do this is I would just draw text. So I'm going to cut the text, paste it down here. And then I could have a variable name. So I'll get rid of this else statement. Oops. So I could create a new variable and say, let's use S for string. Say I'm a cat. And now I can draw the data that I've saved in the variable instead of that hard-coded data, just the string itself. So now, without adding any more code, I don't have to add in another text function. I can say, if the mouse is pressed, S equals hello. And so I get the same effect. And so this means that I have one line of code that's actually drawing the text. And I have this separate part of my code that's deciding what text is being drawn and saving it as a variable. And so for something really simple like this isn't really necessary. But as we add to this, we'll see that doing other changes require keeping track of different values. And so this will make it easier to make multiple changes. So let's do that now, and then we'll do the images later. Yeah. Oh yeah, sorry. Let is like the same thing as var, basically, but it's a more modern version of it. But I haven't actually explained that, so I keep forgetting. But var is fine to use here. Okay. So another way that I can set this up, if I want to have different text appear, if I hover over different places, I can, instead of asking if mouse is pressed, I can say if mouse X is greater than, let's say, width over 2. So now if I move the mouse, I get different text just by moving across the screen. I can also add to this. I can say, and mouse is pressed. So remember, we can do compound conditionals to make our statement more complicated. So now I can move over here. If I'm clicking or if I'm not clicking, I just get that area. So if I want to increase the number of areas that I have, I can use else if. And so I'm going to get rid of this mouse is pressed for a second. So I could say else if let's divide by 3. Or actually, if I do less than, how do I want to divide up the space? We could divide it into different quadrants. So what I could say is if the X is greater than half of the width, so it's on the right side of the canvas, and mouse Y is greater than height over 2. So this means it has to be on the bottom right side of the canvas. Oops. Oh, I used the ampersand by mistake. Oh, whoops. Let me get rid of that code. Okay, so now when the mouse is down here in the bottom right, I get that text. Anywhere else, I get the original text. So then I can say else if, and so then I want to get a different quadrant. So if the mouse X is greater than width over 2 and it's greater than height over 2, that's that bottom quadrant, right? I'm dividing the canvas into so the normal conditions are if the mouse is up here, right? So that we can look at what would be the case if the mouse is up there. So in that case, mouse X is less than width over 2, and mouse Y, or wait, wrong one. Mouse X is still greater because we're on the right, and mouse Y is less than height over 2. So these lines are getting kind of long because I'm using these compound conditions. So there's multiple different ways to write this. So then we could say S equals goodbye. So now we have goodbye and hello down here. So it looks almost exactly the same. The only difference is this greater than versus less than. So saying if y is up here, y is less than height over 2. Remember, y starts at 0 and it gets bigger as it goes down. And so height over 2 is right here. If the mouse goes below there, then we get the goodbye or the hello. So then we have one more quadrant. So if we know that the mouse is not greater than width over 2 or height over 2 and not greater than width over 2 or less than height over 2, we can see if mouse X is less than width over 2 and mouse Y is greater than height over 2. And so for this one, I'll say S equals, what else can our cat say? I love code. Okay, so now we have I'm a cat and I love code and goodbye and hello. We can move our mouse around and get these different changes. So there's no real relationship between the position of the mouse and the text that's being displayed. So it's a sort of a non sequitur, but we can see what those different conditions are, and you can work on designing it so that it maybe makes a little more sense. You could also change where the text appears and add other components to what's happening. So that's one way of writing it. There's a lot of other ways that we could set this up. We could start with one quadrant and then check the other quadrant. So we could use a nested if statement to do that. So I'm going to comment this out and try another way to do it. So it doesn't really matter exactly how you do it, but there's just different ways to approach it. So for example, I could say if mouse X is greater than width over 2. So this way I know that the mouse is on the right side of the canvas. And then once I'm inside of that if, I could then ask about the Y. I could say if mouse Y is greater than height over 2, then we could say S equals hello. So now all I have to do here is say else, because I already know that the mouse is on the right side of the canvas. I also know that the mouse is not on the left side of the on the bottom of the canvas if I if this is false. So in my else statement, then I can use my S equals, oops, goodbye. So then I can add an else to my original if. So you can see the structure can get very confusing. So again, it's going to work the same way. One style might, make more sense or less sense. So if I'm not below on the bottom of my canvas, then I'm at the top of my canvas. And so now I can ask where the y is. And so I can say if mouse y is greater than height over 2, then that's my final text, which is I love code. And so we get the same effect. So it behaves exactly the same way, but you can see in one case, I'm sort of like I have fewer conditions, right? I have if mouse x is greater than width, if mouse y is greater than height, and then if mouse y is greater than height. But I have a bunch of nested if statements and else statements. So depending on how you like to read code, you may think this one makes a lot more sense, where you can see both of the conditions at the same time for each piece of text. Or you might prefer this code, which is more steps, but each individual line is more simplified. Okay, so let's do another example. I'm going to make a copy of this. Any questions on those two approaches? All right. So another thing I may want to do is change the text in some sort of sequence as I click on the image. So I'm going to make a copy of this and do another example. So I'm going to duplicate, and we'll call this example 3. Okay, so now what I want to do, I'm going to get rid of all this stuff. And put my variable up here. So remember, if I want a variable to be in the global scope, that means I can change it in different places, and that means it's going to stay consistently the same value as, even if it changes, it won't get rewritten if it's not in the draw function. So what I want to do now is make it so that when I click, I'll move to the next piece of text. And in order to do that, I need another variable. I need something to count how many times have I clicked. And so this is another approach or pattern that's very common in code, especially any interaction or anything that has to do with timing, sequencing, any like slides program, anything like that. You'll see this a lot. So I'm going to create a new variable called counter. And this is a really simple variable, but it's going to allow me to make my program a lot more interesting. So the counter value is just going to start at 0. In programming, we tend to start things at 0. And we're just going to count every time we click. And depending on what our counter value is, we'll change our text. So to capture my clicks, I'm going to add another function. Doesn't really matter where I put this. I'll put it in between setup and draw. So I'm going to call this mouse pressed. And so this will happen every time I click the mouse. And I'm just going to increment counter by 1. So I'm going to say counter plus plus. And this is a shorthand for counter equals counter plus 1, just incrementing the value. And so we'll see the counter go up as we click. And then based on that counter, I can change my text. So the text starts at I'm a cat. We don't really need to change that. Although we do need to capture it once we cycle back around. So let's add it in there. Well, we can do that later. So what I can do is say if counter, well, actually, let's put it in there. Let's just add it here. So if counter equals 0, then our string is I'm a cat. Okay, so this won't change anything because there's no other condition. So let's also draw our counter so we can just see it. So I'll do this text counter. I'll put it at 10, 10. Or I need to put it down a little bit more. Okay. So you can see every time I click, the counter goes up by 1. That is this counter plus plus. It's very simple shorthand for just increase the value by 1. And so I'm saying if the counter equals 0, then s equals I'm a cat. But I haven't created any other conditions, so nothing else is happening. So we can create some other conditions. I can say else if counter equals 1. And we can change s to say hello. Okay, so now when I hit 1, now the value of s is being set to hello. And we could actually put this whole thing inside of mouse pressed. That would probably be more efficient, but it doesn't make a big difference. But if I keep going, it doesn't change anymore, right? Because I still have the same string. The value doesn't go away, even though that condition is no longer being met. Okay, so we can keep going. Else if counter equals 2, s is I love code. Okay, so now we get I'm a cat, hello, I love code. And let's add one more. And we can say else if counter equals 3, s equals goodbye. Okay, so now we have our whole sequence, and if we keep clicking, the counter just keeps going up. So we can actually use another conditional to reset our counter. So you can see conditionals are really useful. There's a lot of stuff we can do to control the functionality and sequence of our program. So I'm going to go back up to mouse pressed, and I'm just going to say if the counter gets up to a certain point, like the number of different texts that I have, if it gets past that, we can reset it. So I'll say if counter is greater than, and the last number I have is 3, so I'll just use that. Counter is greater than 3, then I've gone through all of my texts and I want to reset, so I can just say counter equals 0. I can set it back to the beginning. So now I have 0, I'm a cat, hello, I love code, goodbye, and back to 0. And so you can create a sequence. You don't have to reset it. You could just have one sequence and then have that be the end. You can make it as long as you want. You can keep adding more if statements for as many different texts or images that you might have. Yeah, you can sequence a lot of different things using this basic conditional statement. So we're going to change the image as well. Any questions before we do that? Yeah. Oh, up farther? And I can put this on the Discord as well. I think I should do that more. I don't always remember to do that. I should link it in the videos too. I don't think I've been doing that. Do that in the future. Yeah. What? Yeah. It's what? Oh, yeah, that might be true. Let's see. Yeah, well, it's pretty much the same. So variable counter equals 0. I have the same counter equals 0. Mouse press, counter plus equals 1. Counter equals 4, counter equals 0. That's similar. I used plus plus instead of plus equals 1. And then I said if counter is greater than 3, counter equals 0. So that's kind of the same thing. Greater than 3 is different than equals 4, but they actually have the same meaning, right? Once I get to 4, those are both true. And then in here, for this example, I'm changing the self-portrait. So I'm changing these different variables. But it's a little bit different using a different operator, but it has the same result. So this would be the same if I said counter is equal to 4, because once we get to 4, we're greater than 3. So it ends up being the same. There's different ways to approach the same problem. All right, let's add another image and then we'll move on. So I'm gonna go over here. So I already have a cat. Let's add a dog in here. So I'm gonna go to Google Images and go to Tools, go to Creative Commons. And our cat is square, so let's find a square dog. Let's see if I can't really make it be square, but let's see. Something that looks square. This looks pretty square. It's not exactly square. Let's see, that's almost, not quite. There's no square dogs. That one looks kind of square. Nope. Oh, this one is kind of square. No. Let's see if there's a way to do that. Size. No. Okay. All right. I'm just gonna take this beagle then. So I'll go to this website. I'm gonna make sure to copy this link so I don't lose it. And let's see, download, show in folder. And so I want to upload this to the P5 editor. So I'm going to go into my file system and go to upload file. And then I can just drag this on there. So I'm just going to drag it. It's got kind of a long name actually, so I'm going to rename it first. Rename dog. Okay. And so now I have to load the dog and add it in. And so I have my cat image. I can put a comma here and just say dog image. So if I want to declare a few variables at the same time, one way I can do that is by just putting a comma in between them. So this is, slightly more convenient than adding another line and saying dog image like that. So I'm going to say dog image equals load image dog.jpg. And so remember, this is just loading the image data, but to draw the image, I have to use this image function here. And so I'm drawing the image before I'm drawing the text. And so the tricky part here is that I have to decide which image to use based on the counter. So again, I could use the image function multiple times, or I can use a variable to track which image I want to use. So either way is fine. There's no wrong way to approach this, but I think if you want to have lots of images, you're going to be better off creating like a placeholder image. So I'm going to make another variable here. I'll call this image container, or no, I'll just call this image reference. And I'll say image ref. And so I'll start with the cat image. I'll say image ref equals cat image. And so now I'll draw the image ref instead of the cat image, but it's pointing to the cat, so it'll be the cat to start with. And so now I can update that image when I want to. So let's add a new section. So after we go to goodbye, I'll say else if counter equals 4, image ref equals dog image. So now I only have to have one section of conditionals. I don't have to have multiple conditionals, and I can just change my image and say my string is I'm a dog. And then I'll add one more. I'll say else if counter equals 5, s equals bark. So a couple things I have to make sure to do. I have to increase my counter. So I'm going to go back up here. And so now I have to go to 6, because 6 is 1 greater than 5. Or I could say larger than 5. And then I also have to make sure if I go back to the beginning, my image reference is going to go back to my cat image. So I'm going to copy this and just make sure if my counter is 0, that my image reference is my cat image. Okay, so I'm a cat. Hello, I love code. Goodbye. Uh-oh. Okay, let's see. Oh, I forgot to change this. I thought I already did that. Image ref. Okay, I'm a cat. Hello, I love code. Goodbye. I'm a dog. Oh, my dog image is like way too big. So you can see there's just like, it's just like the corner of that image. So how do I do that? How do I fix that? Either I have to edit the original image or I have to size the image. So I don't really want to add more variables. So I'm going to go ahead and edit the original image. I'm going to grab this dog image and let's see, what do I have? Can I do it with paint? Wow, it's a big image. So let's resize. And so we want it to be at most like 400 pixels. But yeah, I think my canvas is only 400. Let's check. Oh no, my canvas is 600 by 600. Okay. So I want to make the vertical 600 because the horizontal is more, and click OK. And then I'll just save. So I'll hit Command or Control S. Hopefully that worked. So let's see. Yeah, my dog file is way smaller now, so that's good. So I'll go back to my file system. Just going to delete this guy. So I'm going to click on the arrow and click delete the image I had and go to upload file. And I'll put the dog in there. Okay. And let's try it again. Okay, there's my dog. And so it's not just text and images. You can do this with shapes. So in the examples I have in the class notes, it uses a lot of the same code, but the output is a little different. I have this like little self-portrait where the expression is changing, but it's using the same basic idea. And then I have another self-portrait where if you hover the mouse around, the self-portrait, the expression changes. So, with this project, we're working on images and text, but these concepts, the conditional logic and the counter, they could be applied to anything. Okay, so I think that's enough. I'm gonna save this and, oops. Did I already put, yeah, I already put this one on Discord. I'll put these in the video when I post it. I should do that. But I'm gonna stop recording.